This podcast is supported by listeners like you. We're grateful for your tax-deductible donation at newthoughtphilly.org or the link in the episode description.
A practical prayer is a prayer that works.
These discussions between Reverend Bill Marcioni and Carol Lawrence dive into the details of how it works and how to work it.
Reverend Bill is a New Thought minister and the author of Practical Prayer for Real Results.
Your new life begins with a new thought.
Carol Lawrence is on a spiritual quest, finding the New Thought teaching after decades on the pulpit in 3 different traditional denominations.
I've got some questions.
Together, they're exploring the philosophy and activities that come together from many of the world's religions to create the practical spirituality that is New Thought.
Welcome to the Practical Prayer Podcast. I'm Carol, here with Reverend Dr. Bill Marcioni.
There's something about intelligence and the various flavors that intelligence takes that is worthy of discussion. And this is something that's been coming up a lot for you in social, spiritual, and intellectual circles.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I thought about. Let me say this. When I was little, and you've heard me say this a lot, I was little, so I was the only child for a good while, and spent a lot of time by myself and trying to figure out what the heck is going on and what you don't. When you're a kid, you make up stuff, right? You fill in the gaps. So I would go to Mars often and just sit there and look at the world, right? Mars, because I didn't know any other planets, so that was it. And chaos or whatever might be going on. And I would just imagine how it could be fixed. So I still go to Mars in a different way, but there are times when I'll just say, you know what, I'm just going to Mars. And I look at the world, and it is in such chaos. Not that it hasn't always been, but it's so much more. And we don't need to go into because everybody knows the stuff. But then there's AI that has come, and it seems like there's a lot of stuff going on here, like really more than usual. And so I'm sitting on my Mars, and I look back and I'm thinking, what is all this? And nobody's listening. And here's the thing, is anybody thinking? And I don't mean to be negative when I say nobody's thinking. It's that there's like this big storm going on, like the Euroclydon in Acts 27, just stuff going on, all just winds blowing every which way. And I'm wondering, is anybody thinking? So AI has really, come in along with the rest of the stuff that's crazy. And if you're not listening, if you're not thinking, if you're not on your feet, if you haven't had enough sleep, you're not able to distinguish, I think, the crazy from what's good and what's positive, what's progressive, and what could be helpful. And all of it, even AI alone, can be frightening. So if it was nothing but AI entering into our life space, it would be frightening. But wait a minute, what is this exactly? You said, I think you used the term divine intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
That's where it all begins. So let's start there. And perhaps we can allay some of this fear that we have with artificial intelligence. It really is not artificial. It's divine, right? Mm-hmm. It's divine. It's artificial if you look at yourself. This is going to be ridiculous. But if you look at yourself look at it from the external perspective, where things are happening on the outside, okay, then it's artificial. But when you look at it from a perspective of God is everything is God, everything, is God. It's not artificial. It's just created in a different flavor that is more palatable. And so if we each take a little bite of what's palatable to us, it's not that big a deal. It's exciting. It's fun. If you only, I'm going to say this and I'm turning it over to you because you're going to fix all this. So I had a doctor's appointment this morning, and, there was some scrambling going on. And this is like a really, this is whatever. And I thought, AI would fit in here, just perfectly smooth out some of this. And so it's like, take your little piece. Don't get all freaked out about it. Artificial intelligence is not going to, you're not going to die. It didn't come to kill you. It didn't come to take your life. Just pull out your little piece and maybe it will work to help your dream come true. Do you know?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's God, right? It's divine. It's God. So it's got to be good. You got to bite off your piece and see how it works. Okay, so now you fix it all up.
Yeah, now I'm going to fix it all up. Okay, so we're going to do this by analogy because artificial intelligence and divine intelligence is really too big to have a casual conversation about. So the first point that I want to make is that God loves us so much that God doesn't care what we do to ourselves and each other. That's unconditional love. You love on each other and you live in happiness and harmony, God loves you. You create chaos and turmoil and vast swaths of destruction. Unconditional love says God still loves you. So we don't get the easy way out by saying God would never let this happen. The reason that I bring that up is because all of the things that are happening, including artificial and authentic intelligence, the twin AIs, are self-created. So, for example, artificial intelligence, this AI craze is awesome, and it's capable of doing things that we just didn't understand. You can say, summarize this book for me, and it will in seconds. You don't even have to read the book. You can read the summary, or just hand the summary in. That's what some people are doing at this point. And it works, and it's very powerful. And there's another question there, which is this a good idea? Is this the right thing to be doing? Because if somebody, for example, is a student and they're going to school to learn, and they give their homework assignment to ChatGPT, which then does the homework, are they getting what they need to be getting out of their education? Could they be spending their time, money, and attention on something different? Well, perhaps. And that's why all of this stuff comes down to a good news, bad news situation. So the analogy is the classic old knife, a nice sharp knife. Okay, in one set of hands, it's going to cut up a steak or carve a turkey and be a wonderful celebration. In slightly different form, in another set of hands, it's going to perform a surgery that's going to save a life and put somebody's experience of health back in place. And in a different set of hands with different intention, it's destructive and lethal and can cause a lot of turmoil. The reason that I bring this up is because when we look at AI and try and say it's good, it's divine intelligence showing up in this new form and we get to use it, the answer to that is yes. And there are ways that we can use it appropriately. So one of my, what I've been watching lately is the economy is doing relatively well at this point. And the reason is because there's a huge amount of spending by AI companies to build out their capacity, because there's now a race. And perhaps it's a race towards an internet bubble or a housing bubble or an AI bubble or whatever it is. But in order to make it work, they need to build these data centers. So data centers are huge places where they keep computers, and they require a ridiculous amount of electricity. Okay, so you build your data center and you plug it in. And the AI companies are investing billions of dollars, so we're building these data centers, and we're having competitions amongst communities for build the data center here because it's going to drive my economy, and we're going to create jobs and all the rest of that. And nobody's particularly paying attention that there's no place to plug it in. So they're going to tap into the existing electrical grid, and what happens is the AI data centers are now going to be competing with consumers. So the choice is, are we going to run the data center, or are we going to run my washing machine or my air conditioning? And the way that the market works that out is supply and demand. Demand goes up, the supply stays the same, the price goes up. And that's what we're seeing already, is even before the data centers are finished being built, the The utility companies have to build out a whole lot of capacity so they can provide the energy. And the people who get charged for that are the people who are buying electricity now. And oops, this seemed like a really good steak dinner that we're going to have. And unfortunately, it's possible we just stabbed ourselves. Oh, and those sorts of things happen all the time. And the divine intelligence is saying, yes, this is possible. And then inviting in the guidance. So it's possible. It's something brand new. It's something exciting. Is it a good idea? Now, I love to pat myself on the back when it comes to personalized messaging, which is what online advertising is all about. Because everybody sees different ads, and now they're working out ways that people can see the same ad with different prices. So they can target an individual and say, this is the most that we think they're going to pay for this particular thing, and that's the price we're going to charge. And somebody else who was not as interested is going to pay a lower price. And I was actually involved in starting that industry when it was still in print. So I was involved in personalized print. And as an experiment in like 1999 at a trade show, we custom printed a magazine. And you could, like, on the screen, you could choose what you're interested in, and it would print a magazine that's just giving you the articles that you're interested in. And it was really cool technology. And while I was inventing this, I was saying, this is a really bad idea. Because everybody's going to get different news, and nobody's going to be able to tell what the overall big picture truth is, because we're just focused on our little tiny lane. And that's turned into echo chambers, and it's turned into silos, and all the rest of the things that it's turned into. So there was some intelligence there, and there's some on my part. And yes, guilty as charged. I was involved in helping to bring this about. And there's an opportunity to think about it, to consider, to look at the bigger picture and say, I can do this. Is it a good idea? And even when it comes to artificial intelligence, yes, I can have AI do that. Is that the best way to do it? And I have a whole bunch more I can say about AI and what the answers wind up being. But I will take a breath, because the next thing you're going to say is, that's a lot.
Yes, yes, and yes. That is a lot.
That's a
However,
lot.
You said that, I was thinking about, you said it's difficult to have a casual conversation about this because it is a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But, okay, so it's a lot. This is where we are at this point in life, in the history of humanity. The stuff is a lot. We don't get to sit back and just turn to 3, 6, 10, and 12 anymore. We can't do that. Everything that's going on is a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So when you talked about personalized advertising and another phrase you used, I understand the concept. I didn't know what the phrase is. Where we are now is there's a lot going on. So you get national news, the kind that everybody's used to. Then you get independent news.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at independent news and you'll get a sense, or you'll start thinking this is what's going on. But then you look at the national news, you're thinking it is a whole different, it's two different cameras and reporters and ideologies telling the same story. So what do? It's the same everywhere. And I asked you, I said, is anybody thinking here? You have to figure out what's best for you. Like I bite off the independent news and I bite off over here because I think I need a bigger picture. The independent news is telling me what I want and I feel good for the day. But if I get a glimpse of something over here, I'm thinking, all right, Carol, stop. Listen and synthesize this. So in other words, I'm saying that at the end of the day, it is our responsibility. Even though we've gotten this huge gift of AI and everything can be used for good or not so good and all in between, you have to stop and say, what is this I'm seeing?
Mm-hmm.
How is this good and how can it work for me? For example, with all that's going on, here's what I tell my kids and anybody else that asks my opinion. We have a window. Well, how much of a window we have? Don't worry about it. Just get on it. think about what's good for you, right? Your finances are all screwed up right now. Well, while your finances are all screwed up, and as you said, things are going fairly well, see how you can straighten it out. Okay. So if you have a window that's 30 days, fine. If you have a window that's 6 months, fine. What's the difference? You got to get your stuff. There's a point at which you have to stop and take responsibility and call on that infinite intelligence that is available to you, because all of this is much.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot. And, you could be overwhelmed and just pass out. Well, don't do that. Just take a piece, digest it. Okay, how does this work? How does that work? Otherwise, you'll get overwhelmed. I don't think life is ever going to not be a lot anymore, at least in our lifetime.
I think that's true. And I'm thinking of a whole bunch of different things to say, but let's take a break and then continue saying them.
Learn to put practical prayer to work in your life. The steps are simple to learn and let you begin to get real results to create the life of your dreams immediately. Reverend Bill Marcione's widely acclaimed book, Practical Prayer for Real Results, gives you a clear summary of the New Thought principles behind practical prayer and the series of easy-to-understand steps found in the most effective prayers from religions and spiritual practices all over the world and throughout history. Practical prayer is not a replacement for your religion or practice. It's a technique to make the work you do in consciousness even more effective. The book includes 40 prayers on various topics that you can adapt as needed and use as your own. Practical Prayer for Real Results is available in paperback, Kindle, and audiobook on Amazon or at b-the-light.com. That's b-the-light.com.
Welcome back to the Practical Prayer Podcast. I'm Carol, here with Reverend Dr. Bill Marcione.
We're talking about intelligence, divine, artificial, authentic, and otherwise. And somebody did a survey in the last 10 years. And the survey question is, do you believe that humanity is taking more resources out of the crust of the earth than are being replaced? And uniformly, everybody says yes. Everybody says, yes, we're taking more out of the earth than is being replaced. So, and that's in the form of minerals and oil and all of it. And everybody agrees on that. And then the disagreement becomes, well, is that bad? Is that causing climate change? Is that going to damage the environment? And what is that going to do to my business and my livelihood? Because I'm really living a comfortable lifestyle by having a car that gets pretty good gas mileage, but is still putting carbon out into the yada, 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 yada. Wind back 300, 400, 500 years to when the Europeans first got to North America, and they wanted to buy the land from the Native Americans who were living here. And they just laughed. They wouldn't even buy the land. You can give us the trinkets, but we're in a partnership with the land. They didn't get it. They didn't understand the sort of pillaging that could happen to their environment. And that pillaging has been going on for an awfully long time. Is it a good idea? Is it possible that the perspective of we're in partnership with the land and we can all eat really well if we basically catch a buffalo and then eat it, and then when we're hungry again we catch another buffalo, instead of making this massive system out of feeding lots and lots of people? And by the way, we used up all the buffalo. Feeding our forefathers. So there are different ways to look at it, and some have a different perspective and a longer perspective. And the question comes about the ethics of whatever it is that we're doing. So if somebody says, oh, I have to get the answer to this test question, and I'm supposed to know it, but I don't, so I'm going to ask ChatGPT, that's not ethical. That's not the way to do it. And people are cutting corners, and there's a lot of cutting corners that's been going on. Ethics is really tricky. Doing something that's ethical is really tricky. My daughter just started a graduate program, a doctoral program, and the coursework that she's doing now is research methods and reporting on research methods. And a big deal about research is doing things that are ethical. So you can't do a study that's going to harm the people who are in the study group. So there's a lot of focus and a lot of attention that goes into that. And now I bring up The World's Biggest Loser. So the reality TV show that was on in the early 2000s. Because somebody did a documentary, and it just came out recently, about whatever, season 6 or season 9. And the show had been going on long enough that some researchers said, hey, we want to study metabolism. And they've got this group of people who are dead set on being in this thing where they're going to eat very little and they're going to exercise themselves like crazy. And there is no way in the world we can set up an ethical research study to have somebody approve this, because getting people to do that is just unethical, to starve them and or yell at them and force them into physical exhaustion. But they got the okay to do it because these people were going to do it anyway. And the ethics question was answered ahead of time. And then they got to look at this unethical situation, and they learned something about it, that metabolism doesn't work the way we thought the metabolism worked. And the things that caused the weight loss weren't the things that we thought caused the weight loss. The things that keep people to have the weight stay off is also different. And it's like, what kind of intelligence is that? And the answer is the intelligence is available everywhere. And sometimes we get to stop and listen and do something that's going to be ethical and do something that's going to be reasonable, even if it's counterintuitive, even if it goes against what we originally thought. Should I use artificial intelligence to do X, Y, or Z? Try it. See what it's like to do some of the things that you're doing, and keep that ethics question in the back of your mind. Is this the best way to do this? And also keep in mind that what artificial intelligence, especially generative AI, is going to do is it's going to, because it's basically read everything and it's heard everything. And so when you ask a question, it's going to give you the most common answer. It actually puts the sentence together by what's the most likely word to come after this word in the sentence. And that's how it generates it. Well, that's average. That's coming out with the same answer that's already been come out with before. So there is no way that it's original. Now, maybe it's original for you. Maybe there are ways, and perhaps I can ask generative AI some questions that I haven't thought about and let it give me some new stuff to think about. But that's a thinking augmentation tool for me, rather than handing off the authority and the intelligence to the machine. Again, that's a lot.
But it's important. It is important to stop at that point and decide, what is it going to, how will this work best for me? Because it's out there. You know, I mean, butter is on this market never runs out of butter. I don't particularly think it's good for you, but it tastes good on your popcorn. Okay, so you got to decide what is, using the word ethical is kind of touchy here to say what's ethical, but what's ethical for you? What works for you? And you used the term, you said you got to stop. You have to stop and think this through. Now, what I do has always required, and continuously even more, requires that I read and I understand. I read. And so I do that. My whole world is scheduled around my being able to read and synthesize what I've read. So I could go to AI and say, here's the subject, give it to me, bam, I got it. In 4 seconds, 5 seconds. That doesn't work with me.
Right.
It doesn't, because I don't know it here. So, okay, I can get by with this, or wherever else I am, I can get by. But suppose I'm somewhere else and I don't have access to that. And you ask me about something that I clearly sounded like I have had expertise in, but on the spot without the instrument, I don't have it.
Yep.
Right? Now, number one, that's totally embarrassing. Number two, it's totally avoidable. You just don't use it that way.
Mm-hmm.
I decide that, yes, it will help me do research faster, but I still have to digest it. That's as far as I'm going with that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going, that's it. And the other thing, people will say, well, things are moving. Listen, I don't talk about anything I don't know. So if I haven't had a chance to digest it last week, that is not the conversation for this week. Wait, next week, put it on the calendar until I can do the work. That's, what would you call that? That's a personal ethic, would you say?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. But what other kind of ethic is it?
Well, exactly.
When you get down to it, yeah.
Well, yeah, and like our organizational, governmental, societal ethics are basically personal ethics that are reinforced and agreed to by everyone.
Mm-hmm.
There's some things that we just agree are wrong, and things that we are agreed to that's our highest and best that we can aspire to. And that's all a question of ethics, although we usually don't frame it that way. And somebody does something unethical and then they start looking at the law. Well, yes, I know it was unethical and it's unethical. What does the law say it's illegal? Because where I'm going to spend the next 6 to 10 years depends on that question rather than the ethicality of whatever the action was. So there's, just for fun, I had ChatGPT write a sermon for me. Didn't use it. Just asked. And it was like, give me an Easter sermon based on metaphysics of Easter, and using New Thought terms. And it was not bad. It was not inspiring. It was not bad. It didn't actually turn up anything new, because I'd done several of those talks previously. So it was possibly not just the sort of thing that everybody would say. It might have been things that I said. Who knows what's going into the language models that they're using. But I would never use that right out of the box. Now, there are times when I'm preparing a talk and I'll Google things and look stuff up and get myself some new insights. Say, hey, how does this apply? And then look at what the facts are and then be able to weave those together. But I'm using it much more, like you're saying, as a research tool to throw logs on the fire rather than to be the entire fire. And a friend of mine, Nicholas, is working on an AI tool. He's actually made some great progress and is getting ready to debut it for New Thought and for students of New Thought. And rather than teach you New Thought, what he's done is he's taken a lot of the material that is available in the public domain about New Thought and put it into a learning engine. So you can then go in and find out what Ralph Waldo Emerson and Emma Curtis Hopkins and Thomas Troward had in common. What are the things that they said similarly? What are the things that they said differently? Does this group think about this or that? And it's the same sort of research that you do all the time, because you have these conversations with your ascended masters and you let them argue with each other. That's because you've done the same amount of learning, and you can do that in your own using protein-based intelligence to put those pieces together, and it serves as guidance. So you can say, okay, so if I'm going to talk to somebody about that, I'm going to teach a class about this. This is some of the commonality that I can point out. This becomes a resource that I can use and channel into my life, into my experience, into my work. But it's different than just clicking the go button and letting the machine drive the whole conversation.
And it's how you feel about it, and this is really going back to, you remember we talked about the work that you have to do in terms of your own self-development and your own spiritual elevation and all those fancy words that we can use. It's who you are. and everything that I do, and believe me, like I'm stumbling all over the place. So I'm not saying that I'm perfect. I'm saying, the only yardstick I have is me. So what makes me feel okay and good and positive and empowered is that I know what I know and I know how to find it. You know what I mean? I guess because I've been on this track for so long, I know what I know and I know how to get what I need to get. And then if I sit still and meditate and do all the things that I do, I'm going to hear from my ascended masters, and I have my definition of how they come, and others, it doesn't matter. I get it. I get it. And I'm learning to get that information from a number of different ways. And I even at some point, I picked up a new tool and I felt very unsure about it, and listen to this now. I'm feeling, is this ethical? Is this whatever? Should I do this? And I sat there and I said, Spirit, I'm just not sure about this. And here's what came back to me. Carol, if I put a monkey wrench in your hand, you would still use it to do what you do. What's the problem?
There you go.
I laughed so hard, and all of a sudden that thing that I wasn't concerned about just became a tool like anything else. And so I use it. Mm-hmm. But it starts with you and who you want to be, who you think you are, what's good for you, what works for you. And then what comes into your space, if it doesn't matter, you're not going to you'll feel a resistance to accepting it. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense. And in fact, we're going to take another break, and then that's what the prayer for this episode is going to be about. Because God knows what's ethical, and we can ask. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's Reverend Bill letting you know that the Practical Prayer for Real Results class is now available on demand. That's right, you can take it at your own pace, anytime you want. All of the information is at BeTheLight.com. That's B-the-light.com. You know where to find that stuff. The class is 5 lessons, broken down into 18 modules, and you can take them at whatever pace is comfortable for you. As you work through the process, it starts out with the theory, goes into the practice, there are experiential activities and exercises, and at the end of the program, you will wind up with an understanding of how practical prayer works, and a practical prayer for yourself that will work to create transformation in your life. And as you know, it works for everything. Take a look at the class online at BeTheLight.com. There's a sample lesson so you can see how the class is going to work for you, and then dive in. The great news is it's on sale now. You can register and save $20 off of the regular price. I'm looking forward to seeing you in class.
Welcome back to the Practical Prayer Podcast. I'm Carol, here with Reverend Dr. Bill Marcioni.
It's been a wonderful conversation about intelligence, authentic and otherwise, and the partnership that we either find ourselves in or the competition we find ourselves in with machine-based intelligence or knowledge or logic. And all of the questions that brings up. And it's not just about artificial intelligence. I keep on seeing things about, I'm spending too much time scrolling on screens. I'm losing track of what's important to me because I get onto Instagram Reels and I pick my head up 5 minutes later and it's 2 hours have elapsed. And I'm binge watching YouTube and the excesses that we get involved in. And they're very real. And the businesses that are making their livelihood from keeping our attention are working real hard to be able to do that. And our responsibility, our opportunity is to be clear about what's good for us. Mm-hmm. And that applies in the areas of what's the ethical way of using artificial intelligence, or is it worth doing anything at all with? What's the right content about my personal life to post on social media? Who should I listen to when I'm just doom scrolling around and trying to find the news? Is it news just because it showed up in my feed, or is there some step that I get to take? There's a lot of implications in there. The prayer today is about divine guidance, because there is one infinite intelligence. There is one mind. And that one is sharing itself as all of its creation. It's one mind, it's one energy, it's one love, it's one life. It is one infinite presence, individualized in all sorts of different ways. And those ways include me and each one who is listening to this prayer. And that intelligence, that infinite intelligence that knows everything, that is the font of all knowledge, that is the same mind with which we are each thinking. And if it's possible anywhere, it's possible everywhere. If something can be known at all, it can be known anywhere, and it can be known to us. Mm-hmm. Insight and intuition are knowing something without knowing why we know it. So rather than trying to figure it out, which is fun, and our ego tells us that we're really good at it and smart, and isn't that great? Instead of figuring it out, we can go within and turn our attention away from the world around us to that infinite intelligence, that divine power and presence that abides within, that bright light of God's love that is shining now as each of us. We are each an individualized human life, and we know how we got here, but we have no idea how to create a human life except by starting with another human life or two. That infinite creative power that has created everything has created each of us, and it continues to create. It knows how to do all this. It knows all of the answers. It knows, it has all the insight. So as we let go of our attachment to that which we want, which we prefer, we let go of the how and the timing and the insistence that it be our way. We can ask that question. Is this my next best step? What is my next best step? Is this ethical? What is the highest and best that I can do for myself and those around me? And in fact, all of humanity in this next activity, in this next moment. To pose these questions and know that that infinite intelligence is available. It is sharing itself now and continuously as and for and through each of us, and that guidance is available. So as each of us opens to that guidance, the insight, the wisdom, the knowledge, the knowing of that next perfect step is made clear. And it doesn't need to be subtle tea leaves. It doesn't need to be little tiny hints. It can be a bright light and an obvious sign. And that's what I'm claiming for each of us. That next perfect step being revealed in a way that is so completely clear and obvious. And I know that that infinite creative power that creates everything is creating this goodness, this newness now, as and for and through each of us. I'm so, so grateful for it. I'm grateful for the good that's coming into the world by means of us. I'm grateful for that new uplift as we take those next best steps. I'm grateful for the awareness of this creative process and the ability to speak this word and release it into that creative law. And so with gratitude for all of this good, I speak this word and I release it into that creative law. And I know it's already saying yes, and the good is at hand. And so it is.
The Practical Prayer Podcast with Reverend Bill Marcioni and Carol Lawrence is a production of BeTheLight.com.
be-the-light.com.
Where you can find more information about practical prayer for real results.
Our theme is by Music of Wisdom. You can learn about the spiritual community of New Thought Philadelphia with daily guided meditations,
Weekly celebrations of spirit,
and Reverend Bill's classes in practical spirituality
at newthoughtphilly.org.
This podcast is supported by listeners like you. We're grateful for your tax-deductible donation at newthoughtphilly.org or the link in the episode description.